Shabbat Shalom to all of you joining us virtually. As we enter into this weekend, in Jewish circles, some refer to this time as Shabbat Tzedek, the Sabbath of justice, which honors the life and the work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and more broadly, honors the civil rights movement. The words and actions by Dr. King helped to galvanize a movement with its eyes and heart set on modeling the best in us, the best of our humanity. As I reflected on where we are in this particular moment of recalling the life and legacy of Dr. King, I was reminded that the very creation of the world, according to our tradition, was brought into being through the power of words. The words are right in front of us in our daily morning liturgy. Baruch she'amar v'chaya olam. Blessed be the one who spoke the world into being. Last week, Rabbi Gimbel reminded us of the power of words. They can unite, they can transform and inspire. They can express our potentials and also can express our consequences. This past week, we watched in horror how words and rhetoric have severe consequences. Last week's riotous mob, whose members laid siege to our Capitol, violently threatened our representatives, injured and even killed members of law enforcement. The Talmud, our rabbinic teachings, liken speech to hurt another to the idea of murder, as the blood rushes from the face of the embarrassed just as blood flows from the body. In our tradition, words have real and even potential fatal consequences. And as my friend and colleague, Rabbi Jonathan Jaffe from New York reminded me this week, the Talmudic blood of shame has been drawn and become manifest on the steps of the Capitol. Yet tonight, we focus differently. We lay focus to the words that unite, that transform, that inspire. Let my people go. Justice, justice shall you pursue. Love your neighbor as yourself. Care for the stranger, for you were once strangers in the land of Egypt, among others. Tonight, we celebrate this Shabbat as one of justice, hope, and possibility. Let us use our prayers and the inspiring messages we will hear as our personal and collective motivation for deep reflection and reverence for the power of words and their ability to both create and destroy. Baruch she'amar v'chaya olam. Blessed be the one who spoke the world into being. So may it be with the words and actions we each employ. Amen. We begin this evening with our entrance into Kabbalat Shabbat, our time when we are receiving this moment. We begin Lo Alecha Halimor, when we say, may nation lift up sword against nation, and may we study war no more. This is the call, this is the heat in our moments where violence feels rampant, where hate feels unending. Let us not lift up sword against nation. Let us study war no more. We join together.
Lo alecha hanacha likmor, lo alecha likmor, lo alecha hanacha likmor, lo alecha likmor, velo alta ben chorim lehibatel mimena, velo alta ben chorim, velo alta ben chorim lehibatel mimena.
as I was introducing the words of Alecha, my head was in the ways in which war is created. But in a sense, the words of Lo Alecha are about the ability to finish work that we are not necessarily required to finish, but nor are we free to desist from the sacred work we have and the task on hand. So may it be as we kindle these Sabbath lights that we are reminded with the power, the capacity, the beauty of each light, the Spirit reigns within each of us. And so I invite you to rise if you're able, perhaps to kindle lights of your own in your home. And so we may join together in the blessings.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Tov lehodot l'Adonai ולזמר לשמך העליון. טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך העליון. On this the day of days, my lips shall sing your praise, for I know that you'll always be here surrounding me. Tov lehodot l'Adonai ולזמר לשמך העליון. טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך העליון. My spirit takes release. I close my eyes in peace. From my soul heard far above springs a song of love. Tov lehodot l'Adonai ולזמר לשמך העליון. טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך העליון. I wish to understand the wonders of your hand, for all the blessings that are mine rise from your design. Tov lehodot l'Adonai ולזמר לשמך העליון. טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך העליון. Tochem unei am segula boi chala boi chala lechadodi likakala yalanai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekavela lechadodi likakala yalanai 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 b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed, le'olam va'ed. Yalanai lai yalanai lai 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 lai.
We read together Ma'ariv Aravim. Baruch Ata Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro Ma'ariv Aravim, b'chokhmah poteach she'arim, uvitvuna mishane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, misader et hakochavim, b'mishmerotehem b'rakia kirtzono, borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה. אדוני צבאות שמו. ילך חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב ערבים. And we pray responsively. In each age we receive and transmit Torah. At each moment we are addressed by the world. In each age we are challenged by our ancient teaching. At each moment we stand face to face with truth. In each moment, in each age we add our wisdom to that which has gone before. At each moment the knowing heart is filled with wonder. In each age the children of Torah become the builders and seek to set the world firm on a foundation of truth. כי הם חיינו ויורך ימינו והם נגע יומם ולילה גאוותך אל תסר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב עמו ישראל. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Please be seated and join us in chanting Ve'ahavta.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'otecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shokbecha uv'kumecha uv'shartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Growing up, I never understood why my grandparents made such a big deal out of the part of the Seder when we read, each generation has to see themselves leaving Egypt. I understood the Egypt they saw their generation leave. They immigrated to America and made a life for themselves. Now, this is supposed to be a golden age for Jews in America, a time that for the first time in centuries, Jews have largely been accepted into society. But remember that it was just a generation ago that anti-Semitism played out by Jews not being able to live in certain neighborhoods, not getting jobs, and facing overt, profound discrimination. Me and my generation, we've got it made. Jews are a part of American society, our lives are normalized, and we don't face the same threats to our safety that the Jews of Europe faced in the first half of the 20th century. Of course, that's what I used to think. That was before the Hebrew year 5779 happened. Pittsburgh, Poway, shots fired in synagogues, and just recently men wearing Auschwitz counselor sweatshirts on our nation's capital were seen without nary a second glance. As the ADL has noted, anti-Semitism is becoming more and more a part of American society, perhaps becoming somewhat normalized. And Jews are facing threats to their safety at levels not seen in this generation. In the aftermath of moments like those I named and so many others that have happened in recent times, it's clear that the resurgence of anti-Semitism is the Egypt my generation will have to leave. It's up to us, each of us, to reach out across the religious, political, racial, and ethnic lines. It is up to us to demand our leaders stand up against hate. It is up to us to see ourselves as if we had personally gone out of Egypt to make sure future generations don't have an Egypt they need to leave. It is up to us to never forget that task every time we join together in singing our prayer of redemption, Mi Chamocha.
Standing at the sea, Mi Chamocha, standing at the sea, Mi Chamocha, standing at the sea, Mi Chamocha, freedom's on our way. Singing and dancing, Mi Chamocha, singing and dancing, Mi Chamocha, singing and dancing, Mi Chamocha, freedom's on our way. Freedom, freedom, freedom. she parts. Michamocha, freedom's on our way. Walking through the water, Michamocha, walking through the water, Michamocha, walking through the water, Michamocha, freedom's on our way. Freedom, 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 freedom's on our way. We're on the other side, Michamocha, we're on the other side, Michamocha, we're on the other side, Michamocha, freedom's on our way. One God, Michamocha, one God, Michamocha, one God, Michamocha, freedom's on our way. Freedom, 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 freedom's on our way.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms.
Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu, Lishalom.
Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu, Lishalom. Amidah, Shomreinu lechaim,
Ufros aleinu, Sukkot Shlomecha. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms.
Shamru b'nei Israel et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם בריתותם. שמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם בריתותם. ביני ובין בני ישראל
את השמיים ואת הארץ.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש. שבת ויהי נפש. שבת ויהי נחש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. We know that we can't do the work of justice alone. We have to walk together. And there are also moments when we need that private moment, that moment to center ourselves, that moment to stand before God and have those one-on-one conversations that we all know that we need to sometimes have. We rise together on page 155 as we begin our Amidah. Adonai Sifatai Tivta Ufi Agite Hilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. We continue individually using the words of our ancient tradition or the words of our hearts. as we prepare for Mishaberach Lecholim, our prayer for healing, we think of those who we name that are a part of our local community and our broader community within our hearts. I invite you also to share the names of your loved ones with those around you, and if you would like to, in the chat as well, so that we may all know for whom we are praying for healing. We're especially mindful of Phyllis Bendit, Norman Berman, Sandy Berman, Melvin Cohen, Rabbi Stanley Davids and Risa Bat Miriam, the Edwards family, Samantha Forush, Gad Ben Mira Israel, Denise Garrick, Evie Golden, Nancy Gordon, Steve Gould, Felicity Dominguez Howell, Ellen Hutt, Al Jacobs, Heidi Krantz, Marsha Lewis and family, David Murillo III, Nessa Bat Yosefa Shoshana, Nancy Sandweiss, Rhonda Schwartz, Randy Selleck, Ruth Batsara, Sandy Shearer, Patricia Spira and Marvin Spira, Sharon Thomas, Maxine Trimble and Gerald Trimble, David Tossman, Fred Valfer, Kathy Weil and John Weil, George Wise. To those names that I mentioned, those names that you mentioned, and to all those names that go unmentioned, we offer this prayer for healing.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
As I mentioned when we began this evening, on this Shabbat Tzedek, on this Sabbath of justice, we honor the life and the work of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As Jews working toward a more just society, we know that the vital work of the civil rights movement is not complete, and Shabbat Tzedek represents an opportunity for us to both renew and reimagine our commitment to this most sacred work. It is a moment to both recognize those whose pursuit of justice and freedom paved the path we walked on the road towards redemption. The truth is that many among us experience both privilege and comfort. Yet, even with some of the comforts we partake, the experience of Egypt endures. Not all are free. And so tonight, we are tasked with shaking ourselves from complacency as we reaffirm our pursuit of justice, partaking in experience on this Shabbat that I hope begins to move us toward action. This Shabbat, our recognition of the life and work of Dr. King carries a painful weightiness. It comes at a moment of moral reckoning in our country, a time when divisions are high, a time where narratives, whether divergent or intersecting, compete for our attention and action. There is heaviness and doubt in this moment. And that we, in this moment, the doubt of being able to find common ground amidst the emotional and political rubble we may feel trapped under. Much like the Israelites in this week's portion, Va'era, they felt the weight of their exiting Egypt and the subsequent reality that sunk in. So too, our way to the promised land is once more compromised. Bear before us, from attempts to overturn our American democracy and the will of the people to the pains of a pandemic. It can feel, well, overwhelming at times and endless, a journey with no end. Yet even with all the unknowns, we are here, needing to call upon our better angels, tasked to weather the modern plagues of deception and hatred for us, hatred for the other, by listening and reflecting, by being an upstander, by striving to be human in those places in which humanity appears to be absent. A time where narratives, in every sense of the word, are about the work in the world that we must do to find the truth, the cause, the just. Dr. King's messages were always powerful, but this year, in this moment, they are calling even more intensely upon us. So tonight, we are blessed with the opportunity to both reflect and be called to action by my new friend and fellow San Diegan, Genevieve Jones-Wright. Miss Jones-Wright proudly served San Diego County as a public defender from 2006 to 2019, and now serves as a founding executive director of Community Advocates for Just and Moral Governance, an impact litigation organization that works to hold government accountable to all people, especially those who have been disenfranchised. In addition to her critical work in moral governance, she is also the founder of Motivation in Action, a board member of the Davis Harp Foundation, a volunteer attorney for the California Innocence Project, and the president of the Earl B. Gilliam Bar Association. Her journey is compelling. Raised by a single mother in a low-income home in Southeast San Diego, where devotion to family and self-respect was cultivated. In keeping with her goal of carrying the bags of justice, Thurgood Marshall, Genevieve earned her BA in Mass Media Communications from the University of San Diego, a JD from Howard Law, and an LLM in Trial Advocacy, specializing in federal criminal defense from California Western School of Law. Thank you, Genevieve, for what I know will be inspiring words on racial justice and our work as allies of the Black community to be explicit about our need to fight against anti-Blackness. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Genevieve Jones-Wright, and I am a proud native San Diegan and a co-founder and the executive director of Community Advocates for Just and Moral Governance, or MOGO. MOGO is a nonprofit organization that engages in various forms of advocacy, including impact litigation, in order to hold government accountable to all people, especially those who have been marginalized. The work that MOGO does is the work to achieve racial and social justice. And so it is my honor to be here with you all today at your MLK service. In Dr. King's famous I Have a Dream speech, he talked about coming to the nation's capital in order to cash a check. He said that when the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note, according to King, was a promise that all men and women, both black and white alike, would be guaranteed the absolute rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Dr. King said that it was obvious that America had defaulted on this promissory note insofar as it concerned her citizens of color. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America had given the Negro people a bad check, a check that had come back marked insufficient funds. Although Dr. King said these words in 1963, the words still ring true today, unfortunately, in 2021. But just like Dr. King, I refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. And so again, it is my pleasure to be here with you all today to talk about how we can do the work together to achieve Dr. King's dream so that it is fully realized. We must all be encouraged to refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in what Dr. King called the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. We must work together, come together, and ask for America to make good on her promises. Together we do the work and we cash the check that Dr. King said will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice that we all should enjoy. Dr. King said that now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. And now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. I am so happy to be here with my brothers and my sisters as people of faith. And as King said, now is the time for us to make justice a reality for all of God's children. No, we are not living under de jure segregation, but we are still living with the vestiges of slavery and Jim Crow and segregation because we have never fully reckoned with our past as a nation. And we've never fully eradicated the root of these systems. Dare I say, we have never eradicated the roots of systemic racism and structural racism. That is white supremacy. Just one look at the state of our criminal legal system, and this is evident. Dr. King said that it would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. The urgency of the moment. And we are indeed in a moment in America, but it is up to us to transform this moment that we are in into a movement. With George Floyd, the reality of two Americas was made apparent. As we are still demanding justice for Breonna Taylor, the existence of two-tiered justice system is still apparent. But we are in a moment. We are not in a movement. America is fickle, moving from the coverage of one issue to the next hot button issue, and even from one pandemic to the other. You see, the novel coronavirus 2019 may be novel or new, but the pandemic of racism is not. And the coronavirus has served as a magnifying glass on our societal ills, where inequities in income levels and race and even zip codes are revealed even more. But these disparities have always been upon us because we've never eradicated this pandemic of racism. And so now America is at a crossroads. And we're having these conversations, these hard conversations like the ones we are engaging in today. These are the conversations that we must have, the conversations about the root of the two Americas, where one America fully trusts law enforcement and even has learned to weaponize it against the other America. The other America who has endured brutality and violence at the hands of law enforcement historically and even today. We are at a crossroads where we have to come together and acknowledge that there are crimes by the police against Black people that are deeply rooted in our racist history and systems of oppression that we must eradicate. We have to come together and understand that it's not just our criminal legal system, but it's also our education systems, our political systems, our healthcare systems, our economic systems. They're all rooted in structural racism. And this is why we see ongoing oppression and poverty in marginalized communities. Psalm 89:14 says that righteousness and justice are the foundation of God's throne. And it is good to be unified in petitions to the one true God. Indeed, we are a people of faith. And so we stand united as we petition to the one true God, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, God the Creator. God who we know is a just God. God who sets the standard for justice. Despite the recent reforms we've seen, we know that there is still work to do. We have seen the number of police killings of civilians remain consistent. The number of police killings every year since 2013 are about 1,000. And even more shocking is that 99% of these killings result in the officers not being charged. We are in a time where even protesting police brutality is met with more police violence. And the activities that Black people cannot engage in is getting longer and longer. So as in the case of Ahmaud Arbery, Black people can't go jogging without having our lives taken by so-called vigilantes who are just white supremacists. And the list of African Americans being killed in our homes is getting longer and longer as we remember Breonna Taylor and Botham Jean and a Tatiana Jefferson who couldn't even relax in the comfort of their own homes or even sleep without being killed by law enforcement. We can't ask for help after being in a car crash like Jonathan Farrell or Renisha McBride, or have a cell phone like Stephon Clark without having our lives taken, or leaving a party to get to safety like Jordan Edwards, or playing loud music like Jordan Davis, or sell CDs like Alton Sterling, or just get a traffic ticket without our lives and our bodies being in danger like Sandra Bland. We can't lawfully carry a weapon like Philando Castile or like Corey Jones. We can't break down on the public road and have car problems. Like Randy Evans, we can't ask an officer a question. Like Amadou Diallo, we can't even take out our wallet. Like Walter Scott, we can't run. Like Eric Gardner, we can't breathe. Like Freddie Gray, we can't live. And like Yvonne Smallwood, we can't even cash our check in peace. And this is why it's important for us to do together what Dr. King came to do in the March on Washington in 1963 on that August day. We have to come together and cash that check and make America good on her promises for freedom and justice and liberty and constitutional protections for all. And as King said, as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead, that we can never turn back. That when people ask, when will you be satisfied? Like King, we say we can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. He said those words in 1963, and they are still true today as Black people are racially profiled every day, stopped and searched and arrested, and have force used against them disproportionately compared to their white counterparts. Searched at a higher rate than their white counterparts, although they are less likely to be found with contraband or illegal items on their person. Yes, We've made progress, but we have to keep marching ahead. Measure B passed overwhelmingly in the city of San Diego with 75% of the vote, but we must make sure that it is fully implemented. We cannot afford to not give the resources that it needs to hold law enforcement accountable. We live in a time where countless studies and data shows that racial profiling happens in the city of San Diego, where the San Diego Police Department stops Black drivers at a rate of 219% higher than white drivers. And the sheriff has similar rates. Yet we have a district attorney and a city attorney who have not and will not implement policies that serve all of San Diegans and will rid us of racial profiling and racial motivations and stopping and searching and making arrests of certain people. Indeed, we know that we have a criminal justice system where racial motivation and racial bias taints prosecutions, where in our federal system, Black defendants can expect to serve sentences that are 20% higher than white defendants who have been convicted of same or similar crimes. We know that in our state system, Blacks and Latinos are sentenced to longer sentence when compared to similarly situated white defendants. And it is even true in our juvenile system. No, we cannot be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. We cannot be satisfied while people are victims of racial profiling. We cannot be satisfied. And we cannot make it the job of one group to do the work. As Dr. King said, we must realize that our destinies are tied to your destiny, and that your freedom is inherently linked to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. We together must make dreams of Dr. King come true, where the nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of what the nation has put on paper. Black people indeed have been fighting for the soul of America since the very beginning, and we will never stop. Dr. King had a dream that his 4 little children would one day live in a nation where they would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. But as last week's insurrection at the Capitol shows us, the manner in which actions are viewed are colored by the color of the skin of the actors. And there is a very real and glaring difference between how Black and white people are perceived and viewed and labeled and treated, not just by mainstream media, but by law enforcement and even power holders, decision makers in our hallowed hallways of Congress even. And there are no similarities between Black Lives Matter protesters who are asking that the constitutional protections that were guaranteed to all people extend to Black people, that Black lives be valued, that Black lives be seen as sacred. There are no similarities between those requests and the objectives of the Black Lives Matter protesters who are fighting to dismantle white supremacy and those criminals who tried to overthrow our government in an attempted coup last week, whose failed attempt was an attempt to uphold white supremacy. As I listened and read various statements from public and elected officials and various organizations about the insurrection at the Capitol last week, I heard people condemn violence. I heard people condemn the disrespect to our halls by waving the Confederate flag. But no one acknowledged or condemned what begat that disrespect and the flying of the Confederate flag. No one condemned what begat the violence, which is white supremacy. I heard people say that this is not America, that this is not who we are. But if there's one thing you take from this conversation today, it's that we have to be real about who America has always been ever since her inception, ever since the very first ship that carried slaves came to this country. This is who America is. And we have to say that, and we have to acknowledge it. We can't be in denial in order to actually do the work to make America better. If we are going to make America live up to what she has placed on paper, if we are going to make America make good on her promises, then we have to say we must do better and we can do better. But first, we have to eradicate white supremacy from all of our systems. And when this happens, when we let it ring, when we allow freedom to ring for everyone, as Dr. King said, it will ring from every village and every hamlet, every state and every city. And we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, Black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of that old Negro spiritual. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are all free at last. Because when one person is bound, we are all bound. And if one person is not free, then none of us are free. And so I want to thank you for having me today and having this conversation and for doing the work that we all must engage in to rid ourselves of white supremacy so we can at last, finally, let freedom ring and see Dr. King's dream be fully realized. Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom. My name is Sari Hartman, and I'm a member of your board of directors. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our service this evening. I'd like to remind you that you can find everything you need to know about Beth Israel and upcoming events at our website, cbisd.org. I'd like to share with you this thought found online, unattributed other than credited as Shabbat readings from Princeton University. There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure failure by what we do not gain. On the Sabbath, we seek not to acquire, but to share. There are days when we exploit nature as if it were a horn of plenty that can never be exhausted. On the Sabbath, we stand in wonder before the mystery of creation. There are days when we act as if we cared nothing for the rights of others. On the Sabbath, we are reminded that justice is our duty and a better world our goal. Therefore, we welcome Shabbat, day of rest, day of wonder, day of peace. Shabbat Shalom.
We invite you to rise in body, mind, or spirit as we begin to conclude our service with Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach Adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך
Please be seated. We think of those whom our community has lost. When you hear the names of your family member and those that you loved, we invite you to rise. Sad to announce the recent death of William Bill Singer, father of 6, including Jill and Martin Kohler, Neil and Debbie Singer, grandfather of 18, including Alyssa Burnman, Jeffrey Kohler, Rabbi Davy Singer, Shauna Singer-Lovett, Alexa Broida, and Nikki Broida, and great-grandfather of 5. We are in the period of Shiva, 7 days after the burial, for Jerome Marvin Hyman, grandfather of Tammy, Tom Wendell, great-grandfather of Talia, Max, and Zach. And we are in the period of Shloshim, 30 days after the burial, for Richard Christie Sr., Barbara Cohen, Jerome Klein. And we remember those who died at this time in years past. Talia Egler, Bernard Aronson, Anna Bashlow, Harold Berman, Morris Bernard, Sarah Blumenfeld, Stephen Brainsky, Lance Harris Brager, Nathan Breslauer, Marilyn Choi, Opal Conger, J.D. Conger, Bernard Copen, David G. Davis, Harry Dempsey, Louis Deutsch, Alberto Di Capua, Elias Janogli, Rosalind Easton, Sidney Eidelberg, Max Eldon, Eleanor Epstein, Carl Essenoff, Esther W. Farber, Scott Fippinger, David Fox, Samuel Fraser, Dora Friedman, Adeline Genlar, Nada Gildred, Ruth Bobby Glass, Edward Goldberg, Sally Gottlieb, Martin Grainer, Gertrude Greenberg, Alex Gregory, Claire Gross, Stephen Grossman, Richard Gurevich, Joan Harrison, Alfred Heumann, Isidore Isquith, Gerald Cattleman, Barbara Ann Copps, Marvin Critchman, Saul Lagman, Muriel Lash, Kathy Libovitz, Hilda Lefkowitz, Naomi Levenstein, Claire Levin, Ina Rubinstein Levy, Maureen Janet Lewis, Harry Mallon, Carrie Miller, Philip Minnick, Annabelle Mintz, Ted Mintz, Bella Mishuk, Gladys Modell, Isidore Offenberg, Harriet Paul, Jessica Perlman, Joanne Pekarsky, Rose Ann Peters, I. Pham, Shirley Podrup, Cindy Polgar, Saul Popkin, Ruth Prigozhin, Marion Priceman, Sam Rassin, Sid Reeder, Leo Reich, Jeremiah Robbins, Isidore Rosansky, Gabriel Rubin, Edward Satz, Ria Schaubin, Edith Schlamm, Sheldon Schnitzer, Fred Skolnick, Thelma Schulman, Ruth Rubin Schwartz, Mildred Schwartz, Sarah Selikowitz, Juliana Silberman, Molly Slate, Harry Sonoyman, Marcia Solomon, Jesse Fisher Son, Marilyn Tolby, Max Trop, Harold Clayton Ure, Leon Weitzman, Elizabeth Vorenberg, Margot Weiss, Jean Weissman, Rose Willis, Leonard Wolf, Emmanuel Yavner, Mary Zellingold, Jean Zigman, and Joseph Zamora. If there is a name that I have not called, please stand in your homes, and if you're able, share that name with those that you love. And we all rise and join together in our Kaddish Yatom, our Kaddish prayer. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, B'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Israel, Ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru, Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lolmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, shmei dekudsha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Zichronam livracha, may their memories always be for blessing.